Djokovic's shocking anger when asked about Alcaraz and Sinner. Stay until the end. Later in this video we will show the fragment of the interview where Djokovic gets angry with the journalist. The Serbian will face Sinner in the semi-finals of the tournament being played in Melbourne. Novak Djokovic once again had the goddess of fortune on his side. An injury to MUSETTI when he had the match almost lost gave him the reward of reaching the semi-finals, where he will once again face Jannik Sinner, as already happened last year at Roland Garros and Wimbledon. Noel was asked about the Italian in the press conference, in relation to his stance when it comes to chasing both Jannik and Carlos in the pursuit of titles nowadays, as had already happened to him with Federer and Nadal in his early days, according to the journalist. A reflection that did not sit well with the Serbian, who immediately replied, "Am I chasing Jannik and Carlos? In what sense?" Novak asked, adding, "So am I always the one chasing and never the one being chased?" Seeing that it had not been the best choice of words, the journalist also wanted to highlight his achievements. "No, in the meantime you've won 24 Grand Slams," he said, to which Djokovic replied ironically, "Thank you, it's worth saying it sometimes, isn't it?" Addressing the issue directly, Noel continued without holding his tongue. "I find it a bit disrespectful that what happened between when I started chasing, as you say, Rafa and Roger. And now that I'm chasing Carlos and Jannik is overlooked," Djokovic commented again. "There is probably a period of about 15 years between both in which I dominated the Grand Slams. I think it's important to put it into perspective. To be honest, I don't feel like I'm chasing," he added. But beyond highlighting his career between the two periods mentioned, Djokovic wanted to make it clear that his rivals will always be Roger and Rafa. "I have enormous respect for what Jannik and Carlos are doing and will continue doing for the next 10, 15 or 20 years. It's a kind of natural cycle in sport. You're going to have two other superstars who might have a third one that I will cheer for, because I was always the third one at the beginning. It's good for our sport. I think these kinds of rivalries and the contrast of personalities and playing styles are very good for tennis. And how is it? Does that affect me? I don't feel like I'm chasing. I'm creating my own history," he commented to conclude.
Backwards, it's just something that I guess we have to accept.
Last one, Sam. When you first, in the early part of your career when you were chasing Roger and Rafa for titles, and now at the back end of your career, you're chasing Jannik and Carlos. Is it
I'm chasing Jannik and Carlos? In which sense?
In terms of winning Grand Slam titles just right now.
So I'm always the chaser and I'm never being chased.
In the meantime, you won 24 Grand Slams. But I'm saying it's...
Thanks. It's worth saying that sometimes, right?
Sorry, I should have...
Yeah. No worries.
So what I'm saying is it possible to compare the way you felt initially when you were chasing Roger and Rafa with now when Jannik and Carlos have split the last 8 slams?
Well, I find it a little bit disrespectful that you kind of miss out on what happened in between, where the times when I started chasing, as you say, Rafa and Roger, and now that I'm chasing Carlos and Jannik, and there's probably about 15-year period in between where I was dominating the Grand Slams. So I think it's important to put that in prospect and in perspective. I don't feel like I'm chasing, to be honest. Roger and Rafa will always be my greatest rivals. I have tremendous respect for what Jannik and Carlos are doing, and they continue to do, and they will do for the next 10 to 15, 20 years. God knows how many years they're going to play. They're so young. And this is a kind of a natural cycle in sports. You're going to have another 2 superstars that are going to maybe have another third guy, that I'm going to cheer for because I've always been the third guy at the beginning. But it's good for our sport. I think these kind of rivalries and the contrast of the personalities and the styles of play are very good for tennis. And how's that affecting me? As I said, I don't feel like I'm chasing. I'm creating my own history. And I think, I've been very clear when I say that my intention is always to, in terms of achievements and objectives and results, I want to get to the championship match in every tournament, particularly slams. And those slams are, one of the biggest reasons why I keep on competing and playing tennis. So yeah, that's all I can say. Are they better right now than me and mostly and all other guys? Yes, they are. I mean, the quality and the level is amazing. It's great. It's phenomenal. But does that mean that I walk out with the white flag? No. I mean, I'm going to fight till the last shot, till the last point, and do my very best to challenge them.
Thank you.
Ferrero answers the most uncomfortable question: would he coach Sinner after breaking with Carlos Alcaraz? Stay until the end of the video and subscribe to find out all the details about the new relationship between Ferrero and Sinner. During an interview on SHOCKS, in which he hinted that Carlos Alcaraz's entourage may have contributed to his split with the world number one after the best year of his career, Juan Carlos Ferrero also spoke about Jannik Sinner. Specifically, he was asked whether he would accept a proposal from the Italian to coach him despite being the biggest rival of his former protégé. The Valencian coach, far from closing the door on a hypothetical partnership with Sinner, refused to say "I'd never drink from that water. Right now I don't know. He's an amazing player who, together with Alcaraz, is proving they are the two who fight for everything, and I'm not going to say no," he said. "If the opportunity comes and if everything with Alcaraz has truly come to an end, I would have to think about it," he added. That said, for the moment and despite having received 4 interesting offers, Ferrero will now begin a new adventure as coach of Angel Ayora. What Jannik Sinner said about the comment slave to tennis made by Carlos Alcaraz's former coach. Carlos Alcaraz, at just 22 years old, has become one of the most sincere and human voices in today's tennis. In a recent documentary series, he confessed that his biggest fear is that tennis might end up becoming an obligation. He said that at times he feels enslaved by the sport, which generates anxiety and frustration. These words not only show his vulnerability, but also raise a change of paradigm in how athletes relate to their profession. It's not just about winning, but about how the process is lived. These statements did not go unnoticed. Juan Carlos Ferrero, his coach until recently, also appeared in the series and made his position clear. According to Ferrero, Alcaraz has a very different idea of work and sacrifice. For him, a high-performance mindset implies setting aside certain comforts in favor of success. Ferrero hinted that this more flexible approach from his pupil was incompatible with the team's philosophy. The differences eventually led to their professional separation. Jannik Sinner, the current world number one and Alcaraz's direct rival, has also spoken out. Sinner follows a strict routine focused on performance and discipline, but that does not prevent him from observing with interest what Alcaraz represents. Sinner has acknowledged that reaching the top requires much more than talent, and although he respects Alcaraz's attempt to seek happiness, he doubts that such a formula works on today's tour. However, his tone was not critical, but reflective. This clash of philosophies is not just an issue between coaches and players, it reflects a generational conflict within the sport. The old school, represented by Ferrero, understands success as a long-distance race where pleasures, free time, and often mental health are sacrificed. Alcaraz, on the other hand, belongs to a generation that puts uncomfortable questions on the table. Is it worth winning if you lose your identity along the way? Is it sustainable to live under constant pressure? The professional divorce between Ferrero and Alcaraz also reveals something deeper. When the fundamental values of player and coach do not align, the relationship cracks. Ferrero tried to instill iron discipline, but if the player does not share that vision, what once was motivation becomes a burden. Instead of pushing him forward, the method began to weigh on Alcaraz, generating internal tensions that ultimately made it impossible to continue. Meanwhile, Sinner watches, analyzes, and grows. He too may reach a point where sacrifice outweighs reward, but for now his approach seems aligned with traditional methods. Still, the fact that he respects Alcaraz's stance shows that even within the strictest systems, there is room for debate. It's not about who is right, but about which path is sustainable for each person. Ferrero's departure from Alcaraz's team was more than a professional split, it symbolized a personal change of direction. Alcaraz no longer wants to follow a path laid out by others. He wants to build his own, where success is not at odds with enjoyment. This decision is not easy, especially in a sport that demands constant perfection. However, his courage in speaking openly about his fears and desires has opened a door that other athletes may be looking to cross in silence. Ferrero's figure, though questioned by some after the separation, represents a school that has delivered many results. But even the most successful methods can lose effectiveness if they do not adapt to new generations. Ferrero saw Alcaraz as a diamond in the rough, but perhaps tried to shape him in his own image, without leaving enough space for the young player to define his own. This rigidity may work for a time, but eventually the player needs autonomy. Sinner, meanwhile, continues to show admirable competitive maturity. His rise has not been accompanied by scandals or public conflicts, But that does not mean his path has been easier. His methodical and reserved style has worked for him, but it also shows that not all players need the same things to perform at their best.